Now, masked men attempted to raid Windsor Castle estate whilst Prince William, Princess Catherine and their children were asleep nearby. That's according to the Sun newspaper.
Two men are understood to have scaled a 6-foot fence to steal farm vehicles. Thames Valley Police confirmed a burglary at the property on the Crown Estate, and this was in October.
Well, let's get the thoughts of the former Scotland Yard detective Mike Neville. Now, people might be dismissive and think this is just farm equipment that was targeted, but any breach of a royal boundary by masked people has to be taken seriously, doesn't it? Not least because there's been a crossbow incident in the not-too-distant past.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen there's been almost a scandal that they removed armed officers from the gate where you enter there because they said it frightened tourists, which seems slightly ridiculous because most foreign tourists will see police officers who have weapons all the time. And I suppose the thing that will be on most people's minds is that if the police were not busy policing tweets and were busy policing the streets, would they be catching more burglars? And I think that's what most people will be thinking today.
How concerned do you think the Waleses will be, given that, you know, not just one but two future kings were not far from the gates that were breached? And indeed, I think I'm right in saying it's the access that the family uses to come into and out of the estate. And according to the Sun anyway, it appears as though the two men had been sort of watching and waiting for some time.
Yeah, absolutely. The gate that they do use is that gate, and that they will be very concerned because, of course, these men, their target was farm vehicles. It's a big issue in rural communities, but it only had to be some terrorists, didn't it? With the same small amount of planning, could have got in there. So there will be a major meeting, I imagine today. There'll be a gold group meeting at Thames Valley Police and with the security services about how the royal family are protected, because this is very, very bad, a breach of security.
And the Waleses are famously sort of in favour of a fuss-free life. You know, they don't even want a housekeeper in Adelaide Cottage. It's very small, isn't it? Just 4 bedrooms. The nanny doesn't necessarily stay in the house with them. What sort of security would they have, do you think, around Adelaide Cottage? You know, will there be people doing patrols there, or is it just the estate more generally, given that they like, you know, a bit of a hands-off approach?
Well, I'd imagine there's a massive amount of CCTV. There'll be trip alarms that go off if people cross certain areas. There'll be all sorts of armed patrols and a protection officer as well. They, unfortunately, they might want to live as normal life as possible, but they don't live a normal life, do they? And they are targets for all sorts of terrorism. And as you said, that's 2 future kings in that building. So there'll be a real massive review here because, as I say, if 2 petty thieves, really 2 petty burglars who are targeting farmyard vehicles, then this will come. But what you've got to imagine as well is this is the same Thames Valley Police where PC Andrew Harper was tragically killed by people stealing a quad bike, as they did here. So it carries on being an enormous problem. And I think everybody was saying the police need to refocus on their jobs, which is keeping us all safe. Not just the royal family, but all of us should be entitled to sleep in our beds at night and not think that people are breaking in or stealing things from around our home.
OK, Mike, thanks for filling us in with all of that there.
Well, in fact, what they did, they got over a fence and broke into some farm buildings, which were just a few minutes from where William, Kate and the children were sleeping, and the Thames Valley Police have confirmed a burglary at the property, and it was in October.
So why are we only finding out about this now, if it happened in October?
Because it's on the front page of the of the Sun. Windsor raiders, Will's kids slept. What worries me, though, Ellie, I haven't found anyone. This is a break-in at one of the most secure buildings in the whole of Britain, the Windsor Castle. Farm buildings, we know farms are under huge pressure at the moment anyway because of the government. Still nobody, but we know from the Sun report, 2 masked men clambered over a 6-foot fence, drove off in a pickup and on a quad bike, which was stored in a barn. It's just quite extraordinary.
So stolen farm vehicles, but from the property very close to where Prince William
on the Windsor Royal Estate. So let's talk to, because I mean I thought they were meant to be armed police everywhere. Let's talk to the former head of Royal Protection, Di Davis, who joins us now. Di, if you were still in charge of Royal Protection, would you be a little bit worried this morning reading that on the front page of the Sun? Good morning.
Well, I'd look at all the facts first, and I wouldn't entirely go on everything that whoever reported this back to the Sun. It happened in October. Clearly, questions need to be asked. But it is this particular barrier, from my recollection, is in the outer circumference. And again, each royal residence within that scope of security has, like onions, a huge range of different alarms, alerts, and all the rest of it. And they are permanently have officers attached to those residences. So as far as I was concerned, the royals themselves were not under any kind of threat. I think this was a theft, not dissimilar to thousands that occur, unfortunately, now for our farmer community. I mean, it seems to me they get robbed at every opportunity. But going back to this, no, I think careful analysis. This is a farm. It's years since I was there, but from recollection, it is an not independent, it's on the royal estate, but it is a farm. I'm surprised the alarms didn't go on, and if they did go off, then clearly officers would have responded. But it's a huge area, and you can't have officers patrolling 24/7 when you have so many royal residents to actually look after. And, you know, like everything these days, the police tell us they are stretched. But it's slightly misleading showing pictures of Windsor Castle and those surrounds. This is some miles away from the actual castle. And again, as I say, all the royal residents will have separate security. And I don't think at any time this caused them any concern. But clearly, you will look at it and see what else could be done to ensure this and everywhere else in the vicinity are secure.
And what is concerning about this, though, is as you say, it's not near Windsor Castle, it's near Adelaide Cottage, where we know the Waleses are living. But that's what's so concerning. My understanding is it's the same gate that the Prince of Wales is using, and Catherine, and the children, the same gate that was used by these burglars in order to gain access. You'd think the security would be much tighter around that gate.
Well, again, there are several gates between the road and this particular venue, i.e. where they're living. So I'm not sure which one we're actually talking about. If we're talking one directly on the road, as it were, then this is a barrier. It's not such a gate, but I stand to be corrected because it may have changed since I was there. So again, I say there are several other factors that are involved in this. I don't know the circumstances, so it would be dangerous for me to speculate too much. What I do say, royal security is taken very seriously, and I've no doubt my colleagues will be looking at it to see if indeed such increase requires to be done. But I say again, security is like onions. You have layers and layers. Hopefully those layers are sufficient, but again, never say never, and again, look at this sensibly and practically.
Do you know what struck me, Di, reading it? I thought, well, they're just in the same boat as everybody else in this country. This break-in took place at least a month ago. Highly expensive equipment's been pinched, and no sign of any police breakthrough. And this isn't a criticism of the police, Di. It's a mere reflection of the fact we don't have enough police. They're too overstretched, and crime is on the rise. And so, if even a royal farm can't get the intrusion on a royal farm, what hope for the rest of us?
Well, I agree. I live in Snowdonia in North Wales, and trust me, rural crime is out of sight up here. So, yes, I feel sorry for those involved, the farm manager and all the rest of it, but they're experiencing what my neighbours are experiencing in this part of the world. We've got to look again at how we deal with rural crime, but you're absolutely right. It perhaps illustrates that very little is done across a whole range of issues involving farmers. The poor things are being attacked on all fronts by the government and by others. So this just adds to their woes, and very little is done, and very little farm machinery is actually ever recovered. We've got to look at those behind it. I think 2 vehicles were stolen in this case. We've got to ask the question, what security was there? Whether it's a royal farm or any other farm, people need to be aware of their security, and I'm sure my colleagues will be looking yet again. I think it's a bit of an embarrassment rather than anything else.
But in terms of security of the royal family, I mean, this does need to be taken seriously, doesn't it? After the 2021 crossbow incident on Christmas Day, when that man crossed into Windsor Great Park with a loaded crossbow wanting to kill the Queen, and now this incident of 2 burglars, and they were only there to steal farm equipment. They weren't there, as far as I understand it, at least to cause the family any harm. But it's the accessibility that is very chilling in all of this.
Well, I understand where you're coming from, but I say again, this is a farm that stands alone, away from any secure, and I say again, secure royal residence. So that has to be taken. But no, I take it quite seriously, I can assure you. But again, I'd like to know more of the facts. Were there alarms? Were they switched on? So it seems to me there's a lot more inquiries before somebody like me can open my big mouth and make comments when I don't know all the facts.
Di, we've never thought you've got a big mouth, because what comes out of it is always just pearls of wisdom. It's always a joy to talk to you. That's Di Davis, the former head of Royal Protection. It is worrying because, as I say, the fact that they haven't got anybody yet, and yet they obviously know how they got in, they know how many were there, and if the royal family haven't found anyone.
I know. Well, I'd be interested to know what the Wales family actually requires in terms of security, because they want the hands-off approach, don't they?
Yeah, they'll never tell you.
Obviously, they're not going to tell us, but they don't want even a nanny in the house at all times. They want to keep
try and
the
be as
household
normal
as possible.
Yeah, which is admirable.
So it'd be interesting to see what kind of security they
now,
actually have.
I think we've got a statement, haven't we, from the police?
We do, yes. This is a statement from Thames Valley Police. They've said at around 11:45 p.m. on Sunday, October the 13th, we received a report of a burglary at a property on Crown Estate land near to the A308 in Windsor. Offenders entered a farm building and made off in a black Azuku pickup and a red quad bike. They then made off towards the Old Windsor Datchet area. No arrests have been made at this stage, and an investigation is ongoing.